Okay, here I am. I know it's been a little while, but anyway, here I am. So, got some things that I want to share with you guys. Just some things that have been up, in my world, and that I've been seeing, and that I'm having my own process and my own like relationship to. And I thought that it was, you know let me just put it to you this way and then like see if it's something that resonates with you, if it's something you've experienced. So, as we're here, right? Like we've stepped into the age of Aquarius, right? And so the axis of the age of Aquarius, right, is very much, right, it's Leo and Aquarius, right, is that axis, right? And so this is an axis, right, that has a lot to do, like there's these themes of royalty involved, right? There's also themes of elitism, and also like ascension, right? Like it's ascension vibes, and we're rising up in our consciousness, rising up in our vibes. But then also like this place of like, I'm a sovereign, right? I'm a sovereign soul, I'm a queen, I have a queendom, right? And so we can, so here's an example of how this can kind of like play out in when we're not singing that note, right, like in tune, is in our desire, right, in our aspiration, right, to become more, right, to rise up, right, to elevate ourselves, elevate our life, and and everything, and all of that that entails, is that we could be like trying to make a decision, right? Like, should I break up with him? Should I not break up with him? Should I keep this person in my life? Should I not keep this person in my life? And it's like we can put a lot of pressure, right? Like, and if we are experiencing pressure around needing to make a decision, right, about choosing who is, going to be with us, who's coming with us, right, as we're going on our journey, right, as we're making the moves that we want to make and we're aspiring to be better, right? And this is kind of like what I mean by, it's like it can kind of get us into ego, right, where we're not really singing that note, right? And it's like we're putting pressure on the fact that we have to make a decision of whether or not we're going to keep this thing or not, right? Like whether or not we're going to choose this person in our life or not. Am I going to break up with them, or am I not going to break up with them, right? Am I going to stay in a relationship with this person? Am I going to keep doing business with this type of person, et cetera, right? As opposed to being in your own lane, right? Like really remaining sovereign, like being in your alignment. Like, this is who I am. This is what I desire, right? And then seeing like what gets brought to you because of the vibration that you are emanating, right? And then as you see what gets brought to you, where you're at, right? It's like you don't have to make a decision of, do I break up with this person or not? It's, I'm living my life, right? I'm doing what I want to do. I'm being who I want to be, right? Like I'm maintaining my own sense of sovereignty. I'm maintaining my own sense of, I get to live my best life, right? Like I get to be connected to my highest self, right? And my experience of life making love to me, right? Of God making love to me through this vessel, this vehicle, which is the feminine, right? And as I am doing that, as I'm being that person, I'm going to get to see very, very, very clearly what I'm putting out, right? By who I'm attracting, the relationships that are coming to me, and how they're coming to me, right? So it's like, another way of looking at this is, it's like you can like, I'm going to go out and get something, right? Like, oh, I want to go and, I want to go and get something. So I'm going to go out of my way to go and get that thing that's like at that next level, as opposed to it being brought to you, right? As opposed to, and if something is brought to you, right? If somebody does show up in your life as like, you're like, wait a minute, like, whoa, right? Like, that's an opportunity for you to check in with you and be like, I get it that maybe you're and so it's me, okay, it's somebody shows up in a certain way to you, right? And it's not what you wanted, right? It's not what you are choosing for yourself, right? And and then you get to be personally responsible for exactly where you're at, right? Like, as opposed to getting ahead of ourselves and and I'm saying this because I've been there, right? And it's something that I personally have been working through as I've been navigating my relationships, and how my standards has raised, how I've wanted more for myself, how I've having the courage to love myself more. And because I love myself so much, it's like, I know I'm worthy of having more. I'm worthy of having the best relationships, right? And it's like, what can happen is, like, we can get into this place where it's like we feel like we have to break up with people, right? Because they're not showing up the way that we think they should show up for us, right? And it's like, when you do that, what you're doing is you're putting people in boxes. You're saying this person is incapable of change and I'm better than them because, I have now raised my standards and I've done all of this work on myself, and this person isn't coming and meeting me where I want to be met, right? Like, or they're not doing it for me, right? Like, they're not getting me off how I want to get off, right? And it's like, that's the vibe that we don't want to do, right? Because that's like not singing the note right? It's like we're putting pressure on not only ourselves but on other people, right? Whether we're conscious of it or not, right? And and so here's the thing, right? Is like, with this axis of Leo and Aquarius, it's like there can be a lot of elitism that comes up, right? Where, that is actually the theme, some of the shadows of Aquarius and even of Leo is hierarchy, right? Because think about, it's like a monarchy, right? And so it's like the king or the queen, have like this higher level of elevation over everybody else, right? And so when we kind of look at things through this lens, it's like there is no hierarchy here, right? Like, we're all gods and goddesses. We're all queens. We're all kings and queens, right? And it's like, and it's a very subtle difference. It's a very, very subtle difference. And it's like, if somebody is showing up in your life, right, and they're circling, right, and they're coming, right, it's like, it's because there's resonance there, right? Like, and if you're not liking what you're seeing, right, or you're feeling like, oh well, like, I'm better than that, right? Like, I've raised my standards, like, I don't know why this is showing up in my life, right? And it's an accurate reflection of what you may not be owning within yourself. So, I've had to look at this as I have, as I've been on, on my personal journey of ascension, and as I've changed, right? And not everybody grows, right? And not everybody has, the level of growth that you're having. Hey, hi Maria, how are you? Thanks for tuning in, beautiful. So, it's like, when people aren't showing up for us like how we, need for them, right? It's kind of like, you know, oh, well, that person's not going to be in my life anymore because they're not showing up for me the way I need them to be showing up for me, because these are my needs, right? And this is like, you know, what I need now, right? Like, as opposed to like, no, like, this is just, oh, right, that's not what I want, right? But it's not like you discard that person out of your life, right? Because the thing is that person is you, right? Like, we're all one. We're all consciousness, right? And so everybody is a god or a goddess in disguise to us. So it's more about how you're relating to that person, right? As opposed to whether or not that person is actually in your life. It's who you're being in relationship to that person as opposed to they're in or they're out. You know what I mean? Because if somebody's in or they're out, right? It's like there's a wall there, right? There's a wall of either protection, it's a wall of, a boundary that perhaps, like, we need boundaries, quote unquote boundaries, when, like, that isn't owned fully within us, right? It's like we have to stand our, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not to say that this isn't part of the process. Like, it's kind of like training wheels. It's like, until we actually do get to that place in our life where it's just like, this is just how it is, and this is just how, people in my life show up. Sometimes we feel like we have to hold those boundaries, right? Or we have to stand at those boundaries, or we literally have to pull ourselves out of a relationship and put ourselves over here because we're not actually able to maintain our own vibration, our own sovereignty with that other person being in our field and us getting all wobbly, right? So it's like a type of training wheel where it's like, I can't even be around that person because they trigger me, right? Or I can't even be around that person because what they're reflecting back to me is what I'm not really solid in within myself, right? As opposed to when you've really owned, right, like where you're at and in this place where it's just like, that's just going to be your life, right? It's like, and here's the thing is it's like this journey never ends. It never stops, right? So it's like we're always wanting more, and we're always going to newer and higher levels, right? So to have this like concept of like, oh, like, like I'm so much further along than that person. And here's the other thing too, where it's like, this is another way that I see it show up, where it's like, where we can think it's about information. Well, let me just hold on a second. I want to meaning where it's I'm going to withhold, information, right? My teachings, my knowledge, my expertise, my whatever, because if I give it all, right, then that person knows everything that I know, right? And then now I am not of value to them anymore, right? And here's the thing is people aren't in relationship to us. People don't come to you as, as a coach, as a healer, as a whatever, for the information that you know. They're coming to you for who you're being. They're coming to you for the vibe that you give to them. They're coming to you for the way that you make them feel, not for the information that you're giving to them, right? And here's the thing is there's always more, right? So it's like you don't have to be scared or feel like, if I teach everybody, what it is that I know and I give it all away or whatever, then nobody's going to want to come to me anymore because they've learned everything that they could learn from me and they've exhausted me as a resource or whatever, and now they're done with me, right? And it's like, first of all, there's always more. There's always more. There's different ways that you can say it. Because again, it's about who you're being, right? They're not really, it's not about what I'm saying. It's about the energy and the way that I'm saying it that actually activates you, that actually turns something on inside of you, that actually makes you feel a certain way, right? And so, and as this pertains to coaches, and I've seen this also in the coaching field where it's like, some people, they'll go to a coach or they'll go to a healer, right? And it's like, well, that healer would never want to work with me because they're higher up, right, than I am. That's why I'm coming to them, because they're higher up than me. But it's like, no, they've maybe been through and experienced and come out the other side of something that you haven't come out through. But there's things about you, right, that they don't have online yet, right? Or those codes are dormant, right? Or they don't even have those codes yet, right? And so it's like, this is where, you can start working with all sorts of different people. It's not like, oh, this is my coach, right? This is my healer. And it's always like this student teacher relationship that's like this, right? Where it's like they're up here and I'm down here. And therefore they're never going to want to work with me because I'm down here. No, we're all equal. We're all on the same playing field. It's synarchy, right? And when we can really embrace and eradicate the shadow of of this age of Aquarius and even Leo, because it's really important, right? It's like everybody, it's like so amazing. Like there's so many incredible, amazing things about the age of Aquarius, right? About finding about ancient technologies, right? And telecommunication and vibration and energy and ascension, right? And then also with the Leo axis, right, of fun and play and creativity and like being a god goddess in an embodied form, right? But there's also a shadow that's there as well. And so we also have to be aware of the shadows. And what I mean by shadow is it's not on a harmonic, meaning it's like you're trying to sing the note, but you're not singing it at the right pitch, right? And so it comes out a little bit funky or distorted, right? And so that's the distortion of the Leo and the Aquarius axis is elitism, right? Or like the hierarchy of I'm a queen and, and these people are lower than me, right? Oh, they're not woke. I'm woke. I'm more woke than you, right? Like as if, like it's awakening is not a one-time thing. I mean, unless you're like now, all of a sudden like Anandamayima who like bursts into like avatar status. You know what I mean? Like that's a real thing that exists. I'm not saying that doesn't, but it's like, is that where you're at? Right? Like kind of like, and I can speak to this. I'm the only reason I'm speaking to this is because this is stuff that I have been working through and that I've been processing through as a teacher, as a coach, as a healer on my ascension journey, right? Where it's like sometimes, like that arrogance can like come in, right? And it's like, oh, I have to deal with like the underlings. I have to like speak to people that just don't get it. And you just don't get it because you're like in the 3D, right? Like you're so plugged into the matrix, like you're not woke enough, right? And it's like, whoa, like, and yes, like there is a timeline shift that's happening, absolutely. Meaning, and what I mean by this timeline shift that a lot of people are speaking about is the 3D timeline versus the 5D timeline, right? But there's more than just that timeline going on, right? Like it's not just these two timelines, like, oh, I'm on the 5D timeline, like I'm working in the quantum like all the time, right? And like these other people around me are still stuck in the 3D. Dude, there's like beyond 5D, right? Like so I just wanted to bring some more awareness and talk about this and just see if this is landing for you. Like, is this something that you're experiencing that you can relate to, where it's like, where you feel like you've done like growth in your life, like you've grown as a person, like you've grown as a woman or as a man or as a whatever, right? And then it's like you kind of maybe feel like you're not relating to the people around you, or it's like they're not like fitting, they're not like sinking into you. And so then you kind of feel like you have to make this decision to like break up with them or not, right? And it's like, it's funny because Abraham Hicks kind of jams about this a little bit, and she does it in her own way, where it's like, you don't have to break up with anybody, right? Because when we do that, when we get into this place of I have to make a decision and decide who's in and who's out, right? And it's like, I got to break this contract, right? Because, blah, blah. And it's not to say that, you know, there are all these contracts, like these sacred contracts, right, that we have with people, right? But how I feel like what's happening now is like there is this new timeline, is like those old contracts, right? Like there's new contracts that are being happened as well, right? And it's also, it can be a little premature perhaps, to be kind of like feeling like we have to make this decision around whether or not like I'm gonna be, you know, still married to this person or still working with this person or, you know, still friends with this person or whatever, whatever, right? Because when we do that, what we do is we put people in boxes and we say, that's who you are and you're incapable of change and you're never going to change, and you know, and you're not how I like, you know, you're not what I want, you're not what I need anymore, you're not like hitting my, and that's a kind of like very kind of like in a subliminal, not subliminal, hey Aubrey, what's up goddess, um in a very kind of like subtle, codependent, manipulative, even like using people to get what you want from them. And as you know, like we're shifting from, remember, Capricorn, Saturn being in Capricorn to Saturn being in Aquarius, right? It's like where the truth is coming out, right? And it's like we can look at like where we might have been using people in our life, right? Like using them, you know, because we weren't being sovereign. And now that we don't need them anymore, right? Like now that they're not, you know, being who we needed them to be for us, now they're obsolete, right? It's like we don't need them anymore because they're not being who they need to be for me, right? And it's like, so was this an authentic friendship in the first place? Or was this a friendship or a relationship out of convenience? Right? And Cham, you know, my husband, he's been saying this for like the longest time. And it wasn't until like kind of like really honestly a few years ago, but it really landed recently for me where I really understood what he meant by that, where we have, oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm feeling really good, girl. Oh my God, I can't even like, I just finished recording orgasmic workouts, orgasmic abs in the Mars Moxie. It was like one of the final modules that I put in there, and it was, oh my God, it was so good. It ended up being like a three-parter, right? Because obviously like I could go on and on and on and just like talk about this forever. So I'm super stoked because now I'm like, you know, it's like, oh, like I'm excited because like my sacral, right, is like, fuck yeah, like I could keep going on and on about this. So I just finished doing that and I was just like, I got more to say. I got more to talk about. So coming back to what he says, it's like friends of convenience, where it's like this person's only in your life because like they're doing something for you. Like they're kind of like filling this hole for you that, you know, that you need, right? And so, and as soon as you don't need it, right, it's like you don't need them anymore. And it's kind of like, damn, like, first of all, what can happen is it's like when we have that attitude, right, is it's like we don't make space and we don't allow for relationships to deepen. It's like you put a cap on the fact that this other person, right, like could actually deepen. Like your relationship could get even more juicy, even more intimate, even closer, even more empowering, even more beautiful, even more luxurious, even more prosperous, right? If you were actually really honestly filled inside, right? And once you were filled inside and realized that, oh, I don't need that person anymore, right? but they're still showing up in my life, but they're still showing up in a way that, maybe isn't meeting me how I desire to be met yet, but meanwhile, they're still there. So if they're still there, that means that it's still there within you, right? And there's still opportunity for 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 growth in that relationship, right? So it takes a lot of radical responsibility. It takes and I'm not saying that, like, if you're in a relationship with somebody like this, especially if you're living with them, right? Or especially if you're having to see them all the time because either you work with them, right? Or they're at all the places that you hang out with, right? Where it's like that can kind of like rock you, right? So it like throws you out of alignment because you're not really solid within yourself on what that energetic is, right? And so if that's creating more disharmony for you and that other person, meaning, and let me just say this like in a simpler way, where it is like more growth is possible by you separating, right? Than if you actually stay kind of closer, right? I mean, and this is why people like sometimes they need space, right? It's like, I need to take space, right? I need to take space, right? And other people, right, like when they're feeling like that there is a potential opportunity for the relationship to grow, is it's like they want to be more intimate, right? Because in that they're actually able to be vulnerable and let their walls down, allow themselves to be their emotional camouflage, to be penetrative, be submissive to another person. This can, because this is like control, right? It's like a way that we kind of keep people at arm's length, right? It's a way that we can kind of like control our, you know, our sense of identity, right, in relationship to another person. It's a very kind of sneaky way that the subconscious keeps us in status quo, right? It's like keeping people at an arm's length, right? Because it's like I can control who it is that I think I am in relationship to that person, right? By not allowing myself to be vulnerable and to be truly seen and allow even my shadows to be seen, right? And so this can show up not just like in relationship. I mean, obviously this totally can show up in sex, right? Like this shows up a lot, right? In, you know, if you play out or if you have fantasy or you want to, right? With the domination and submissive type roles, right? And not just that, but like any sort of like fantasies, right? That we might be having, right? It's like the people closest to us sometimes we don't even let them see that part of us. We won't allow ourselves to be seen because we really care about that person so much, right? It's like we really, really like that person. We really love this person. And it's like showing that aspect of actually who we really are. If we don't feel safe, if that container doesn't feel safe, if we don't have trust online within ourselves, then showing that beast, showing that really not so pretty, really, you know, whatever, corrupted for, you know, and I'm going to speak to this in a minute, the corruption with hierarchy and synarchy being this is a gene key band, a frequency band that is really important that, you know, I'm speaking to right now, is because we don't want to risk them judging us and then not liking us, right? And they don't want to be with us anymore because now they're seeing who we really are. They're seeing all of us. And so this is where a lot of relationships, like especially sexual relationships, you know, partners aren't fulfilled, right, in their sexual relating because it's like this person that they love so much that they eat, like let's say they're married, for example, but it doesn't have to show up that way. Obviously, it can show up just dating or even in friendships, right? Or whatever. Or it's like this person that you really like a lot. It's like, I won't even like really be honest about my fantasies or my secret desires or dreams or whatever, because wow, like if they knew that about me, they, you know, but really what it's about is it's like, can I really own that about me? That's really what it boils down to. Can I really love all of myself? Right? Because you got to do that first. If you don't, and if you're not able, right? And if you're not able to do that first with yourself, then yeah, it's not going to show up outside of you. And if that is kind of like what's up and that is what's happening, then that's like where you got to do that inner work, is look at, whoa, how can I own that more? Right? Like, how can I love you. I love every fucking part about you. I love every single piece about you. There's nothing about you that I don't love. Every single part. There's nothing that could ever make me stop loving you. Because that's actually what love is, right? It's like we talk about unconditional love, and it's like, that's kind of like an oxymoron, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? It's like love by its nature is unconditional, right? So it's like to really love someone, right? It's like every single piece about that person, the shadow and the light, right? Like, I'm here for all of it. I'm here for all of it. And essentially what this is it's like, I'm here for all of it, meaning all of my life. I'm here for like, and this is really how we can get into this place of neutrality, right? Where this is what, not being in the polarity or the good or bad, right? Where it's like, I'm better than you, I'm right, you're wrong, right? I'm good, you're bad, or I'm bad, you're good, or, it's like there's no judgment, right? It just is, right? And because the more that we start really peeling back these layers, right? It's like there is only love. And choosing to only see love, choosing to only feel love, right? Where it's like you don't shy away from suffering. Not that you're welcoming it, not that you feel like you have to suffer, right? Or that love is suffering, but meaning that you don't shy away from it, right? Because it is a portal into ecstasy, right? It is the path, it is and can be, the process of suffering and joy coming together that creates ecstasy. So, but in order to do that, right, it's like we really do have to surrender. There's a big surrendering to, I'm here for all of it. I'm here. Everything in my life is happening for me. It's not happening to me, right? I'm not a victim. I'm a sovereign soul in my authenticity, in my authority, right? And me being in my authority doesn't mean, and in fact, when I am truly in my authority, I'm able to see other people in their authority, right? And not need to break up with them or not associate with them, or because like one way that this showed up, like one of the beautiful lessons that I I loved from, that I love about Jesus and his message, right, is like he had no problem being with the sinners, right? The harlots, the, whatever, whatever, right? And of course, there's a lot of different um, ways that you can look at that, meaning where, his relationship to Mary Magdalene, right? A lot of people like she was a whore, right? When actually she was actually a sexual priestess, like an initiated sexual priestess. And so the fact that she was called a whore, you know, or shunned, whatever, by society was also just, you know, just an example of how the feminine has been shamed and judged, right? And so that's another way of looking at it, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is where you look at everybody and their innocence. You look at everybody and you're seeing that child in them, right? Like really choosing to see others in, and this is something that I've personally, this has brought me a lot of pain, and a lot of wisdom, and I've learned a lot from, this place of choosing to see the best in people, right? And then allowing myself to be used or allowing myself to be betrayed by other people because, you know, you're wanting to see the innocence, you're wanting to see the best in them, but how they are showing up for you or treating you, right, isn't right. And so this is what I mean by there's a navigation here where you're not, if somebody is meeting you in that way, right? Like you got to look at the fact that you're available for that. On some level, you're available for that. And this is some of the deep work that I've done, like with abuse, right? Emotional, sexual, physical abuse, right? And I'm not condoning any of it, but where it can, it's like this is where it can be the tricky navigation comes in around just taking ownership for when you're in an abusive relationship, right? Or you're experiencing abuse in a relationship, or, just things in your relationship that you feel aren't what you want, right? And by cutting yourself off, right? Or cutting that other person off, right? It's like not really taking personal ownership for the fact that you're an energetic match to that, right? And the incredible, I mean, the miracles, that are possible when you don't cut yourself off, when you don't cut other people off, right? When you don't isolate, right? Other people or put other people in boxes, is you really do give them the freedom to grow up and show up because you're choosing to stay present with all of it. You're keeping your heart open. When we cut people off, we're not doing that with an open heart. That's not, your heart is not open when you cut people off. When we cut people off, that's a dysfunction. That is the metal element, which belongs to the lungs and the large intestine. It's the metal element. You could also call it the air element within the body is not in harmony, right? It's an overreaction. It's an overactive you know, um, thing, right? Because death is the beginning. So anytime we are choosing to let something go in our life, we're not letting go of that person. We're not letting go of that thing. We're not letting go of that. We're letting go who we're being in relationship to that, right? We're allowing that thing to grow and change because we're growing and changing. So there's this subtle, it's very subtle, right? And you can feel it. And this is like why I'm speaking to this, is because this is something I've had a lot of practice with. And you can feel it. You can feel it when you've been cut off, when you've been put on ice. I've put other people on ice. I've had to, like, or felt like I had to put other people on ice, right? And it's like, that is, again, that's not coming from strength, really. It's not, right? Because it's like, I can't be with that person. I cannot hold my own sense of sovereignty and integrity without having that sense of control. So I need to put them on ice, right? And sometimes, like, yeah, if that is the wise move, if you know that you're not able to be who you want to be, right? And you're also not willing to be vulnerable, right? And let your guard down, let your walls down, and be like, wow, you really, like, my experience of being with you makes it so difficult to maintain my integrity, to maintain my sovereignty, to maintain who I want to be, right? Because there's a lot of wounding here, right? There's a lot of protection here still. It takes so much more courage to do that than it does to leave a relationship, to cut someone off, to walk away. Because when you walk away, right, you don't have to be vulnerable. You actually get to keep your facade up of what that other person actually, who you're being in relationship to that other person, or how that other person is being in relationship to you, what that means about your energy. So, and it can be done. I am here to tell you it can be done, and it isn't easy, but it's exquisite. I'm going to give you an example. The other night, or the other morning rather, I was dreaming, and Cham kind of like, kind of rustled me to wake up, right? And he was right there in front of me, and I was looking at him, and I was like, I was dreaming, right? Like, you just woke me up from my dream. But it was like my reality, but I like this reality better. This is so much better than my dream. And so what this for me, like, is like, for a while, like, I had been dreaming, right, of how I wanted him to show up for me, what I was longing for, how, I wanted him to show up for me, right? And it was in my dreams, right? Because our dreams is, right, it's like our dreams are the truth, right? Like, it's like, and they speak to us in symbols. So, hey, Eartha. Hey, Hugo. So, but eventually those dreams get to become a reality. Those dreams get to come true, right? And so the fact that when I woke up and here it was, this like incredibly sexy, gorgeous, delicious man that like has been loving me and being intimate with me, was like showing up in that way, was like, my dreams are better. My reality is now better than my dreams, because it's like, it's really happening now, right? Like, it's real. I can taste it. I can touch it. I can, and then of course, like, there's other ways to look at that where it's like the reality is actually the illusion, right? But I mean, we're here to play. We're here to make our dreams come true, right? Like we're here to manifest them and have them be alive in the, right? So I just wanted to come on here and and speak to that, because it's what is on my heart, and it's what, I've been going through, and it's what, I can share from having gone through it and come out the other side. And just the amount of intimacy when you choose to stay, right? And we, um, and it can be sad. I'm not saying that there wasn't so many periods of sadness that I've experienced, not just in my one like romantic relationship, but also in my friendships, and even in business relationships where it was like, my business has changed, right? And so the way that I enjoy and I'm choosing to show up for my clients is now different than how I used to show up, right? And there were some clients that didn't get that, right? Right? Where it was just like, it's, it wasn't, they weren't online with that, right? It was like too much of a jump, perhaps, to like, wait a minute, like, you don't touch people. And it's not that I don't do hands-on body work, I do, right? But it's like it's like a piece. It's like my work is me, right? It's like you get me, you get access to me. It's like I don't have to show up and do acupuncture on you. I don't have to show up and touch you, right? Like just being in my presence, just me being me in and of itself is healing, right? And so when, and this is part of, again, that shift from 3D to 5D, right? And so that was also part of an illusion that I also had to come face to face with, right? Is it's like when I was being so committed to my dream and my purpose of who I want to be and how I want to show up in the world and what I really desire, it was like, oh man, I'm going to have to like lose all of these clients and lose all these patients because they're not going to get it, right? And I did manifest that in some way. Absolutely. It was totally a thing that I've had to navigate through. Um, but it's not the truth. It's not the truth. So that's it. That's all I wanted to share with you guys. I love you. Bye.